Hey everyone, and welcome to this Risky Business product demo. My name is Patrick Gray, and joining me today, we have two representatives from Okta. We have Brett Winterford, who we actually used to work with here at Risky Business. He now serves as the Asia Pacific CISO for Okta. Is that about correct, Brett?
That's the one.
That's the one. And we also have Harish Chakravarthy, who is the Technical Marketing Manager for Okta. Did I manage to remember your title correctly, Harish?
You got it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Look at that. We're off to a flying start. So, first of all, Brett, like we've done a fair bit with Okta over the last couple of years, but you're here to demo something quite specific today because obviously, Okta, there's a lot to Okta, right? It's not just something that you're going to demo the whole platform in a short video, but you're here to show us something specific around Passwordless and specifically how the passwordless features of Okta and the passwordless authentication flows of Okta can prevent some of the contemporary, like cookie phishing, person in the middle phishing approaches. Have I got that about right?
Absolutely. Just like we spoke about on the last time I came on the show with you, it's a growing problem, obviously, the theft of session cookies, and we've set about a goal to enable our customers to have a passwordless future, and most importantly, we want that future to be about authenticating using phishing-resistant authenticators. So what we want to show is like what's available today, what's real today in the platform. So Harish and I want to demonstrate three things: password optional enrollment, in other words, bringing new users in without passwords. Harish will activate a new user in a passwordless group, and that group will require the use of phishing-resistant authenticators to access the applications and other resources that they have in Okta. And then he's going to demonstrate the enrollment experience for that new user, both the issuing of a corporate issued security key, but also for Okta FastPass, which is our device-bound authenticator. And then we're going to demonstrate phishing resistance, like you said, this newly created user being tricked into hitting a standard EvilGenX real-time phishing kit. And then finally, we'll demonstrate how Okta Workflows, which is part of Okta, could be used to perform some basic security orchestration off the back of that phishing event. So you'll see a journey from passwordless enrollment of the user, phishing resistance in practice for that user, and then how a security team might think about responding to a phishing detection.
Now it's interesting. I just want to quickly pick you up on something there. You mentioned phishing resistant multi-factor authentication, but and most of the time when we're talking about that, we do mean something like a YubiKey, or even these days we've got these wonderful new things, the pass keys on mobile devices and whatnot. But we should make it clear too that it's not the only way to skin the cat. It's not the only way to solve this problem. And you mentioned device-bound authentication that Okta offers. I mean, essentially you offer a client that can be installed on a workstation, which can offer resistance to phishing-based attacks, and without needing new hardware, right? Like it's probably not going to be as strong as a YubiKey, but it gets you a long way, towards solving that particular problem without introducing new hardware. So there's a couple different ways to do this, right?
Spot on. So you've got, the gold standard, of course, is going to be your physical security keys for phishing resistance. What we've tried to do is cover off every use case we can, every operating system we can, with with an experience that makes it really easy to actually roll it out to your users, obviously, rather than having to enroll individual security keys.
Well, and even just physically distributing the keys. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the reasons Yubico offers a service where you tell them which users to mail the keys to, because even just that process can be, just a headache some people aren't up for, right? Which is fair enough. So, in this way, you could actually, as you were saying, you could roll it out very easily, and of course, there's no hardware cost.
Yeah. So that's and you can also have, I guess, device management, device assurance as part of the authentication flow. So you're getting phishing resistance through this device-bound authenticator, but also it's taking into account the security posture of the device. So
what we used to call, something like NAC from a million years ago, Brett. Not a new concept. So that's some sort of device attestation, right?
Exactly. So we see room for, obviously, we're pretty agnostic to the authenticators that our customers use. Probably been too agnostic in the past. I mean, the security team is probably getting a louder voice at the table these days, talking up the use of WebAuthn and talking up the use of FastPass. But that's why we want to be on this podcast showing this, because as many of our existing customers as possible, we want to be using these kind of experiences that we're going to show you today.
Okay, well, I think we've done enough of the blah blah. It's time to see some action. And I believe, Harish, you are here. You're going to share your screen now and actually show us how you can set some of this
Absolutely.
stuff up via Okta. If you just want to hit share, we can get this show on the road.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone. I'm Harish here. Super excited to give you a live demo. All right. The first thing I want to get started with here is I've currently logged in as myself as an Okta admin. So I've logged into the Okta admin console. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to quickly walk you through the configuration for passwordless authentication. After a successful login, I'm redirected to the dashboard here, and the dashboard has a lot of relevant information. From a security perspective, the key here is the security monitoring widget, which gives me real-time insight into the health insight into my Okta instance, giving me an audit of the security settings. It also gives me threat insights if there are any malicious IP addresses which are getting blocked. Also, it tells me real time if any users have reported any suspicious activity. We are looking good so far. The next thing I want to get started here is with authenticators. For this demonstration purpose, I've enabled a few authenticators here. You can see them all listed, and you see all the characteristic of all these authenticators offering different levels of assurance. And then I want to share with you real quick the enrollment policy I've created for this demo. Just to keep it simple, I've created 2 enrollment policies here. The first enrollment policy obviously is no password assigned. This enrollment policy is right now assigned to a group called Passwordless group. So as new users get created, you can add them to this group. And by default, as you can see here, password is disabled. And there you go. And the authenticators required for this group are going to be your FIDO web authn, in addition to Okta Verify and email. Then I'm going to quickly switch over to the authentication policies because these are the policies which are driving access to your application. For this demonstration purpose, I've created a demo policy right here. Let me go ahead and edit this policy just to further articulate what I've said here. So this policy here, this rule here applies to this passwordless group I shared with you earlier. And this requires a possession factor, which is phishing resistant, that restricts to either Okta Verify or FIDO2. And then I have another rule here, which is the catch-all rule, which applies for all of the users who are not part of the passwordless group, where they have to provide any 2 factors listed right here. That being said, now it's time to create a new user who's going to log in without a password. For that, I'm going to go to Directory. I'm going to click on People. Now let me go ahead and add a user. I'm going to call her Rachel Smith. Let me spell her name here properly. Okay. I provide the primary username, which automatically populates the email. I think the key here is to make sure that we place Rachel in the passwordless group we created earlier. So that means that the enrollment policies associated with the passwordless group, as well as the single sign-on policies, apply to her. In the interest of time, we will activate this account. Let me go ahead and click on Save. Excellent. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Rachel as an Okta admin. Click on More Actions and enroll a security key. I'm going to go ahead and click on Register here. And I'm going to go ahead and provide a PIN for the YubiKey that has been assigned to Rachel. Click on Next. Go ahead, touch on the security key again. Absolutely allow. Excellent. Now registration is complete. I'm going to go ahead and close this. So what I showed you here is the enrollment process for registering a user passwordless and assigning a security key to the user.
So that's
now,
a security key that the admin will just pull out of their pocket, you know, do it on their computer as part of this process, and then just give that key to the user physically.
Absolutely correct, including the PIN. Yes.
Yes.
All right. So you nailed it. All right. Now, so now just to validate everything we just configured, just to make sure that Rachel is able to log in, without a password, with a YubiKey, and also get Okta Verify going, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now switch over as Rachel for this demo. All right. So I'm going to switch over as Rachel here. And I'm going to make some broad assumptions here. Obviously, Rachel is going to receive a device from her employer. She's going to have an onboarding process. She's going to get the YubiKey, the PIN. Then as a part of the onboarding process, she's going to be told, hey, make sure you set up Touch ID on your Mac OS. And then in the interest of time, Okta Verify is going to be installed, but it's not going to be registered. So Rachel will go ahead and register it. And this is all going to be the onboarding process. So we'll take it right from there. So I have Okta Verify downloaded and installed, but now Rachel will go ahead and register it. And then just to keep it simple, I've created the home button here, which will actually go to her Okta dashboard. All right, let's get started here. She's going to click on Get Started, follow the steps here. She's going to provide the URL. I'm going to make an assumption here. This information will be provided to Rachel as a part of onboarding. It's just going to be demo at GoInc, preview.com. Perfect. Click on. Perfect. All right. So obviously, I was testing it with Alex. Now Rachel is going to punch in her username, which is going to be Rachel.Smith. So we're going to click on Next here. She's going to be prompted to provide her PIN now, which she's going to provide. It has been provided to her by the Okta admin. She's going to click on Next. She's again going to click on Touch the PIN. Perfect. And since she's already enabled Touch ID on the device, she's going to click on Next now and enable Touch ID as well. Perfect.
So that's the additional sort of phishing resistant component, isn't it? Which is that the Okta Verify, if you do have a biometric authenticator on the device, the Verify client can use that.
Spot on. Absolutely. So Okta Verify has been successfully registered. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I can also close this tab here. And now let's walk through this login process for Rachel. So Rachel is going to let's do this here. She's going to click on Okta FastPass. Okay, there you go. It picks up Rachel Smith. She's automatically redirected to the Okta dashboard. Life is good. And here, to validate everything that just happened, if I click on Settings here, you should see that the device has been registered for Okta Verify. And then if you look at YubiKey, you can see that it was enrolled like 5 minutes ago, and it was just used less than a minute ago. So yep. Rachel here has 2 authenticators added to her account, and she's all set and good to go.
Yeah, and of course, I imagine that you can choose for that user. That user can use the Okta Verify client or the YubiKey, or can you demand that they use both, or that's up to the admin, I'd imagine, right?
Absolutely correct. So as you said, policies you can determine, and I think let me show you this as well. So let me log out here, right? So if I go back here, instead of clicking on FastPass, if I click on Next here, there you go. Rachel has provided 2 different options here, and she can pick the authenticator that works best for her.
Yep. No, it makes 100% sense. So, from a user experience point of view, and I'll just say too, like the hardware I use at home, I use a iMac Pro, right? And it doesn't have any of the biometric authentication. So that's my normal office computer. And occasionally these days I want to throw it out the window because I also have an M1 MacBook Pro where I can just touch it with my finger and it unlocks, right? So from a user perspective, it's amazing what a difference this makes. I'd imagine you'd even have, companies would even have their own users like really trying to get enrolled in this just so that they don't have to sit there and enter passwords. Passwords are horrible, really, aren't they?
Exactly. That's what we're here for, to get rid of them. All right, perfect. Now let's get into the second part of the demo here, which talks about phishing resistance, right? So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to switch gears, and I'm sharing a terminal here with you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch gears as the bad guy here. I'm going to get into Evil Jinx, which I'm running in an EC2 instance. And I'm going to go ahead and trigger that. Perfect. And obviously, in the interest of time, I've gone ahead and configured alerts URL. Let's pull that up. Perfect. So this is alerts URL, which has been configured in EvilJinx. And now let's see how this works with the phishing resistant factors. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy the phishing URL, switch back here where Rachel logged in. I'm going to go ahead, open a new tab, punch in this URL.
We should probably
press
explain
enter.
too that, I mean, essentially what you've done is spun up a phishing kit.
Exactly.
You're about to send the URL for that phishing kit. And this phishing kit is a contemporary phishing kit, which isn't just designed to capture passwords. It is very much designed to allow a user to successfully authenticate through the phishing kit to the service, and the attacker makes off with the authentication cookies. And this is, the default way to get around things like code generator multi-factor authentication. So we're going to hopefully, well, definitely demonstrate that process failing here, just in case anyone missed the leap there.
All right, so as you can see here, it is as good as a real login page here if you don't look at the URL. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Okta FastPass here. As you can see here, Okta FastPass, Okta Verify here has detected that this page is definitely suspicious, and it's immediately blocked Rachel in this case from proceeding further. And just to validate what just happened, if I look back at EvilJinx, you can see that a new visitor just arrived, but then no session or any such information has been captured.
And that's what we like to see, basically, right?
Awesome. So from there, you've seen obviously some phishing resistance in practice. Now what we want to kind of show you is what's critical about FastPass as a device-bound authenticator is that when a user tries to sign in using FastPass and the origin check fails, that creates an event in Okta system log. And typically in phishing campaigns that we observe, the actors aren't necessarily just coming after you in ones or twos. They're going to, if they're standing up a phishing site, quite often they will be, scraping commercial data aggregation services or leak sites, whatever, to grab as much information they can on your users as possible, and they'll come after you in dozens or hundreds of your users at once, so that they're sending their lures out, just seconds or minutes before the phishing site goes live. In the majority of organizations today, you're going to have a sample of your users, using passwordless phishing-resistant authenticators, but the bulk of them are probably still
they're not enrolled yet. I mean, I see where you're going with this, right? Which is that this is a pretty high quality signal that you've just snapped a phishing campaign, and you can then take that domain and pass that to other teams who can then go off and go through the work that everyone loves, Brett,
Yes.
that everyone in InfoSec who I know loves, which is phishing remediation. Oh, they get all
Lovely
tingly just thinking about their work in phishing remediation.
What I'm hoping we can show is that some of that work, some of that heavy lifting can be done for you. So the more of your users that are enrolled in a phishing resistant authenticator, like you say, it's a signal. It's a pretty high fidelity signal for your security team. You're currently under attack. So here's a little something that we whipped up as an example of one way you might go about performing some very basic security orchestration. So we're going to start with an event hook. An event hook is basically just a way of sending data about an event in Okta off to an external application. And that external application could be any of your security tools. It could also, in this case, just be Okta workflows. So basically the target for any time that this particular event happens, which is, an authentication fails because of that particular reason, it's sending it off to workflows to kick off some automated actions. So if we go to workflows, Harish, workflows, for anyone who doesn't know it, it's our no-code automation suite in Okta. It's typically used by your kind of identity engineers to, I guess, automate away the humdrum of identity operations, all your use cases around joiners, movers, leavers. If you're trying to, offer time-based access to a set of contractors, and they, you want them to be able to access a set of applications for a specific period of time and then not be able to access it afterwards, you can automate all that away so there's no humans in the loop. That's what most people use workflows for. It wasn't developed for security orchestration at all, but if you're operating, at the application layer, for something like this, there's a whole bunch of things you can do without necessarily bringing in an external SOAR. Like I said, you can do it. You can send this event hook anywhere you want. But this little workflow that we've built, the main flow, which is at the bottom, basically is just taking in that event hook. The second one is basically extracting events related to the IP of the phishing site. And I put into that one, it's a fairly long and complicated flow because I've included a bunch of false positive checks in there. Basically, you don't want to take any automated actions if there's any chance that this is some kind of misconfigured middle box or something that, for some reason, the origin check failed that I know that I haven't thought of whenever you're going to take automated actions. So I've put a bunch of false positive checks in there. And then it checks basically the most recent history. It calls Okta system log and says, has anyone authenticated via this IP in the recent past? And has anyone entered a password into an authentication flow via that IP? Not necessarily authenticated, but entered a password, because that's also something you'd want to know, right? And if the false positive checks are met, and then these particular conditions are met, it kicks off a third helper flow, which Harish can open, which is clear user sessions and reset passwords. So if we go to flow history, Harish, at the top, we should be able to see a recent event, 533. So we had a user, it looks like Adele Vance, because just prior to this demo, we did phish Adele. As you saw earlier, Adele was only authenticating via password and a standard OTP. So this is basically because of the phishing detection against the new user, Rachel. It's gone and cleared all the sessions and reset the password for Adele on the basis that Adele had authenticated via that site. I've also got a third flow in there that basically looks at application sessions. So for those,
sorry, this might be a dumb question, but how does Adele log back in and reset those passwords or obtain the passwords that have been resetted on her behalf without that turning into a help desk headache?
I believe that the reset password function is going to, it can be configured several ways, but the way I'd configured it is to send it to her email. Now, of course, the adversary could have access to the email inbox. So you can have a check in there for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Did the email application get access during that session is again what you'd include in your logic here, because the password reset flow feature can be, it has its own policy, basically, recovery, password recovery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to point out that there is that third flow there for resetting application sessions. Clearly, it's something you want to think about. When you're remediating, don't just remediate don't just revoke the Okta session. What application sessions might the actor have accessed as well? And if we flick to Slack, all of these flows, I basically whipped up a quick notification to Slack, so to be an example again of just the kind of automation you can have where you're sending a message to the Slack channel of the security team to say the following events have happened. So if you go right to the bottom and get past all of our testing, you'll see at the bottom there, since we had a failed origin check at this time, this IP has been associated with this many failed and successful authentication attempts. We identified 2 sessions created via this IP and 1 password in the last 24 hours. Please go ahead and perform all the things that you need to do as a security analyst. But above that, you'll also see that there was a particular user who was identified and that the sessions were cleared and that the password was reset. And there's a link directly to Okta system log. If you click on that, Harish, you'll see, that's just a quick path. Again, this is all built into the workflow so that the analyst can dive straight in and look at, what application sessions had been established, what had happened during that
it's nice that you're using, failed U2F or verify authentications to give you some useful information that you can then use to protect people who aren't using those technologies, right? Like that, I understand where you've gone with this, which is where you can derive a benefit when not all of your users are using it. So
exactly, because cool. We are going to be in that situation for a little while, right? Like it's not trivial to take an organization that has been limited in terms of their password requirements because of applications that are 20 years old, they're not going to have all of their users using phishing resistant authenticators overnight. So we have sets of customers that are able to do that. More often than not, they're born in the cloud kind of organizations that have been able to go wall to wall web authn. I'm sure a few of them are among your listeners. But yeah, it's the reality is we need to be using phishing resistance as a bit of a signal for protecting everyone else.
No, I mean, straight up, I'd never thought of that before. I'd never thought of, the idea that you could use the detection capability that's inherent in using some of this phishing resistant stuff to kind of give you some, look, if it can spit out a few domains that are phishing your users, I mean, that is always going to be valuable information. I mean, you've showed us a use case of automation, which is great. Some people are going to be able to do that fine. Other people are going to struggle with it because it's not the way they do things, or they might have their whole other automation system over there for their phishing workflow. But either way, anything that just an attacker hits it and a domain falls out to the security team, like that's always good, especially if it's a high quality signal.
Yep. And I think that there'll be a whole bunch of other potential actions you could take on that signal that I haven't thought of. This is just my instinctive, what would you do straight away? Would you block?
Yeah.
Would you block access to that IP? In future, would you scan back and look at who else has authenticated via that IP? I just wanted to show that within the platform there are ways in which you can do that. Again, most of your listeners have probably got pretty mature security programs with a SOAR solution in place where there are other ways to do this. But again, send the event hook to SOAR and take it from there.
Well, this is what I mean, right? Like, and phishing automation is, it's amazing how much time is spent on phishing automation. And it's also amazing how ad hoc it is, even though it's something that takes up so much time at so many organizations. It's just one of those things where, yeah, I can see certainly for your existing customers, they will have just seen that. And the fact that there's some built-in no-code automation whereby you can nuke sessions and force password resets and things like that. I mean, that's, and how does the licensing work just on the commercial side of this? Is there an additional cost to Okta customers if they want to use the passwordless stuff?
No, FastPass is, and all authenticators, we're completely agnostic. They're available under the MFA.
So every Okta customer can do this? Yeah,
any MFA SKU, if I'm not mistaken, Harish, which is everyone. I think it's pretty standard. But no, you don't pay more to use a phishing resistant authenticator than one that isn't phishing resistant. If anything, it'll cost you less in the long run, I believe, because there might be some charges associated with SMS. I don't know the commercials, but I'm pretty sure that it actually costs you less to be secure.
No. I mean, look, it makes sense for a company that does, single sign-on and authenticates users, right, to offer this as a no-cost option.
So we also showed workflows in action, right? We talked about automation. So workflows, we're giving away 5 free workflows to all Okta customers. So some of the flows we created, you can create too for free, because as a customer you can get like 5 free workflows, and there's no restriction on the flows.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's going to actually close it out. Brett Winterford, Harish Chakravarthy, thank you both so much for joining me to walk through that. That was actually, I found that really interesting. I think the thing that I took away from that I found most interesting is that even if you can't roll this out to your entire user base, it's still absolutely worth doing and still can provide a benefit to the people who aren't even enrolled. So that was a very interesting thing for me to learn. So thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers, Patrick. Good to see you, mate.